Welcome in. You are listening to a daily editorial here on the KE Report. In this daily editorial, I am chatting with Jordan Roy-Byrne. He is the founder and editor of the Daily Gold website. Jordan is one of my favorite technicians that we have on the show, who is focused on the precious metals, but not in a vacuum. He does look at other markets, and that's something that we're going to be talking about in this interview. But first, Jordan, let's just get your updated commentary. What do you think about this breakout above 1,300 for gold that happened on Monday, and we've been able to hold above that level now through about half the day on Wednesday?
Well, I mean, we were able, as you said, we were able to break above 1,300. We broke above 1,307, which I've been telling my subscribers that's an important level. We were able to break above that. We saw very strong gains in the miners and on the post, I was going to say intraday, but it was really after the session, in the thin aftermarket session. We saw gold spike up to 1330 on news of the missile launch in North Korea. And even from that point, I mean, there's resistance at 1330. So I expected gold would soften for a couple of days, and it looks like that's what's happening. Although we aren't seeing that big of a reversal since gold hit 1330 and has come off. For example, silver today is actually higher, and that's good. We always want to see silver outperforming gold. But really, the very interesting thing, which I know we're going to talk about, is the dollar, which quietly has made a bullish reversal. And if you look at a weekly chart, I mean, it looks pretty bullish to me. We had a strong reversal in the dollar yesterday, and today we're getting follow through. And I mean, that's something we've talked about ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks, that the dollar is oversold and looking to rally. And so it looks like that's starting to happen. And so what the impact will be on gold and silver and the miners, it's hard to say right now, although at least today, precious metals look to be holding up pretty well, considering the strength in the dollar.
So, Jordan, regarding the dollar, yes, earlier this week we had the dollar again break below 92, which is really this lower part or lowest part of the range that it's been in for over 2 years now. But it did have that reversal yesterday, and the dollar is up. Last time I checked, 0.46 on the dollar index. So it is making a nice move higher. But in your eyes, the last time we saw a little bit of a bounce, it was muted and turned around actually quite quickly in the dollar. Do you think this time is different? And if so, what levels are you watching as the dollar could potentially climb?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the price action, this looks different to me. The dollar could get up to 94. I'm showing it about 92.78 right now, and 94 is where at the end of July the dollar tried to rally, and then it came back and made a new low, and then after that low in early August, it rallied up and failed at 94 a couple times, 3 days in a row actually. So 94 is clear resistance, and perhaps the dollar could be making an inverse head and shoulders bottom where it could rally up to 94 and then consolidate again, and potentially break 94. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. But we'll see, because a couple of days ago, as you noted, yesterday actually, the dollar actually traded down to, 2 days ago, the dollar closed actually at its lowest closing level since January 2015. But I wanted to see if the dollar could go below the lowest tick, if it could close below the lowest tick, which last year I believe was 91.88 maybe, or something in that area. And yesterday the dollar, it opened up above 92, traded all the way down to that level, probably even a little bit below it, but then closed back up where it opened, forming a bullish hammer. And today we're seeing follow through. So now we're seeing some bullish price action in the dollar. And of course, we know that sentiment has been extremely bearish, and the dollar has been extremely oversold. And I think this is something that precious metals bulls really have to keep in mind, because even though the price action in precious metals looks pretty good, the dollar here looks like it's probably found a bottom for the time being. So we'll have to see how that plays out, what the impact will be on precious metals. I think it will probably be negative to some degree, but today precious metals are holding up pretty well in spite of the strong gain in the greenback.
Jordan, do you place any significance on the fact that the dollar right now is below its 200-week moving average? It hasn't really been close to this in, well, a number of years, and just this week it did finally break below. The 200-week moving average is sitting at about 92.62. So we're challenging it, trying to get back above it, but do you see significance here?
No, I don't. We've talked about this before. The 200-week moving average is really insignificant. I mean, it's way too long of a period to mean anything. No, I don't use that in my work. I mean, on the daily charts, I use the 50, 200, and 200-day moving average, and also the 400-day moving average. And then on weekly charts, I look at the 80-week moving average, and on monthly charts, I look at usually the 20-month and 40-month moving averages. Also on the weekly charts, I look at the 50 week. I also mentioned I look at the 80 week. So the numbers, the moving averages that I use generally change based on what time frame I'm looking at. I mean, 200 weeks is like 4 years. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't tell me anything, honestly.
Okay, fair enough. Just wanted to ask. Now, Jordan, if we are able, or if the dollar is able to break that 94 level and we do start to get a bit more of a run, what sort of trickle-over effect do you think it has into other markets as well? Not just the precious metals. It could put some pressure on the precious metals, but what about the base metals? Do you think that those could also be impacted?
Yes, I think they would be, because that's a great question, by the way, because copper has obviously been very strong. I mean, it's had a really strong run since June. I'm looking at the chart right now from just above 250 to above $3. Obviously, if the dollar gets quite a bit stronger here, I think you would see copper come off, not just because of the obvious negative correlation, but I think if the dollar gets a lot stronger, that would also hurt the stock market, because I know that some people I follow have been saying maybe the dollar will rebound and that will start to impact the stock market, and that could cause a correction in the stock market. So maybe, I mean, it sounds kind of bizarre to say, but maybe the dollar affects the stock market negatively. And so in that regard, copper and the base metals start to correct. And if the strength of the dollar feeds through to the stock market and causes the stock market to weaken and correct, like we talked about before, then maybe at that point, that would be bullish for precious metals. So it could kind of, I mean, it sounds bizarre to say because we know that the dollar has a negative correlation, obviously, with precious metals, gold especially. But maybe the dollar rallies a little bit over the next couple of weeks, and that hurts precious metals at first. But if the dollar causes the stock market to start to correct and weaken, then maybe you get a lag. And from that weakness, maybe that's when precious metals make their next move higher. So that, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. I mean, even if the dollar let's say it rallies here for a couple weeks. I mean, if precious metals continue to hold up around these levels, that would be a really good sign. And that's what they're doing today. I mean, they're holding up well. And what that basically tells you is gold is rising in foreign currencies. So that's, I mean, just in the scenario that the dollar rallies up to 94, maybe goes a little bit higher, we have to see how precious metals are performing relative to the stock market and also foreign currencies. Because if they're holding up very well, or even rising on those ratios, even if the dollar is rallying, that tells us that there's relative strength in precious metals and that they're still in good position to rally later. But if the dollar is rallying and precious metals are really getting hit, that means they're not rising against those other asset classes, and that means they could be in a little bit of trouble. So I know we're talking about a lot of hypotheticals here, but we've been talking about this for the last couple of months, Corey, how there's a lot of cross currents going on, and it's not quite clear how might the dollar impact precious metals? How will the stock market impact precious metals? How about bonds? So hopefully the dollar in the next week or two could give us a clearer focus as we go into the fall.
Well, and that seems to be the focus now, and understandably so. Is the dollar going to break down? Is the dollar going to put in some sort of a significant run up? And if it does, what's going to be impacted, because there is not always this perfect inverse correlation between the metals and the dollar, but sometimes there is. So something that, yes, we have been talking about a lot, and you know what, Jordan? We're probably going to keep on talking about it because the dollar has been, well, quite the currency this year, going almost straight down, very much due for a bounce. Let's see if that happens and if it's starting just yesterday. Jordan, thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.